Okay, it's 4:35, June the 16th to 11. And there's an object in the sky. I'm going to check it out. It's just been sitting there for a while. Okay, I thought it was a cluster and it's a big one. Okay, so this is acting or pretending to be a star in the sky. You just have to get this thing in position and then I'll leave it. Okay, that's a giant cluster and it's way up in the sky, and it's no star, it's no planet, it's no moon, it's not a plane or a helicopter. It's a giant cluster of these alien organisms that are in the air, and this is what happens when they cluster up, a whole lot of them together. This is exactly what happens. And look at that plasma ball. It's huge. And it's so high up in the sky that it looks like a star if you look at it with just your eyes. But look at this. That's really what it is. And you can see the orbs just going counterclockwise all around the nucleus, and the nucleus is the glowing part, and that's the part that that's doing all the action in terms of creating the plasma and the heat. But the other orbs on the outside, they also have a role to play, because they enter the nucleus and exit the nucleus. And that's how they charge up. They enter the nucleus, charge up, and then leave. And then other orbs take their places in the nucleus. But as they go into the nucleus, they spin super fast around the nucleus center, and they create a plasma ball like that. And that's like really way up in the sky. I can't even see Toronto because it's like almost overhead. You can't even see Toronto, but Toronto is down there, and this thing is over here. I don't know if you can still see it. It's very high up, and if you look at it with just your eyes, it looks like a star, but it's not a star. Look, it changed shape and color and everything. It's so high up, I'm having trouble adjusting the camera because it's right above me. And it's moving. I can't get a fix on it. It keeps moving. I will have to hold the camera on it. So it's moving around in the sky. I can't just set the camera up and keep it in one position because it keeps moving around. I just lost it. Okay. Okay, it's turning into a hexahedron. So I'm not going to go to full zoom because it's moving too much. If I go to full zoom, I'll lose it. Okay, that's really high up, and it looks just like a star. If you're looking at it with just your eyes, you would see a star. You would not see it this way. And look at the air, it's full of these things. Look how it changed shape in a blink of an eye, even faster. It just changed shape and color. And this is what I'm talking about, these entities and these organisms. This is what they're doing in the sky, this is what they're doing on the ground, This is what they do in the water. They do this everywhere. And there's a whole lot of them. And the entire sky is filled with them, the air and everything. So that thing is traveling. Watch how fast it just leaves the screen, and I don't even have it at full zoom. So it's not moving in an orbit or anything like that. It's just moving way too fast. And it's changing shape and color and size and everything. And the size depends on how many orbs go into that nucleus and spark it up so that it gets even larger. Look how fast that thing is traveling. I have to keep readjusting the camera every few seconds. That's one giant cluster, and it's way up in the sky. You can see the orbs just going super fast around the glowing nucleus. And you can see how many are in the sky. This is in our air, all these orbs. This is not out in space or anything like that. This is in our air. We breathe the same thing in, only microparticles, but the same thing. They're all the same. It doesn't matter what size they are. Just look at how fast that thing is moving around. I have to keep readjusting the camera every 2 seconds. I'm going to back off. Just look at all the organisms in the air around it. That's really what's important. The nucleus is just a minor part of how many are in the atmosphere and all around. That nucleus is just a small part of what's really going on. Just because it's glowing doesn't make it any more important than all the rest of them in the picture there that you see in the frame. And the entire Earth's atmosphere is filled with these things. No matter where you live or who you are, you can't escape them. They're all over the place. They're in the water, they're on the ground, they're in the ground, beneath the ground, and they're on everything and everyone on this entire planet. And they can be huge like this cluster, or they can be microscopic where you need an electron microscope to see them. But they're all the same. And they all belong to the same family and act as a family. And these are alien organisms. Just look at how many there are in the air. Now if you look at that with your naked eye, you think it's a star. Just look at the size of that thing. I'm just going to back off to show what it looks like to the naked eye. Okay, it's harder to see now because it's going to be daylight. But if you can see it, that's what it looks like, just like a star up in the sky. And obviously there are no other stars in the sky because that's the only glowing cluster nucleus, and the others are just being idle because now it's time to come down to the ground. Just look at this thing. I have to hold the camera on it because it's moving around. And I can clearly see that that's an alien mass of organisms, and that the sky is full of them. Just look at that thing. You're breathing the same things in, and this is what happens in your body, just on a microscopic scale. So every breath you take, think about having that in your system and inside your body. Look at the way it changed color and shape and everything. That's why they're shapeshifters, because they can change into anything, anytime. They have absolutely no problem in changing themselves. Just look at all that activity right up in the sky over your head. And don't think this is only here where I live. It's every place. Same thing all over the planet. There's absolutely no difference here from anywhere else. So denial is not going to make them go away, and acting stupid and not recognizing that these things are here is not going to make them go away. The only thing that will make them go away is if someone does something about it, and that means a lot of people getting together and doing something to get rid of it. There's millions of these things in the sky. They just don't activate all at once. Most of them are idle and at low frequency. But when they go into high gear and high pitch and increase that frequency, this is what happens. They revolve around that nucleus so fast that they create plasma from the surrounding air just by moving through it so fast. Look at all those organisms. This is the air we're breathing, and this is the result of all that chem spraying. This didn't happen overnight. Look at the air, how full that is of these things. And look at that cluster, how active and how much energy that has. Just look at it. I have to hold it when I'm close because I can't keep track with it. It's moving. Look at how fast those orbs are going around that nucleus. And look how many of them there are. And that's a cluster. All of them and more. I'll show you the size of a cluster. Okay, there it is. That's the size of that cluster. Everything in the picture. Everything in this frame, even more. That's how big the cluster is. This is just the nucleus. And look, it changed shape and color again. Look how many times it changes shape and color. What's happening is that the energy is being increased or decreased depending on what the cluster needs to supply the rest of the clusters revolving around the nucleus. And look at all those organisms. And that's what's in our trees, that's what's in our air, that's what so Here's your reality check. Take a close look. Look how fast that thing is moving across the sky. Every 2 seconds I have to readjust. It's just climbing straight up. It's like a rocket ship. It's climbing straight up. That's how fast it's moving. And it's a cluster. And these are living organisms that are that high up in the atmosphere. They're not only just on the ground here. Okay, it's getting too light out, but at least I have it on film. I'm getting tired of readjusting the camera every 2 seconds because the thing is moving so much. Look at the air. Just look at the air. That's what we're breathing, all of us. That's the air we're breathing. Just look at that plasma, and it's daylight now. I mean, it's dawn, and it's still very bright. I'll back off just to show what it looks like. So if you look at it with the naked eye, it looks like a star up in the sky. I don't even know if you can see it on the... I have a small screen here. But there, it looks like a star. When you come close to it, it's a cluster. And that's how all the stars are. They're all clusters. They're not stars at all. We don't see stars because there's so many of these things in layers in our atmosphere that we never get to see a star. Okay, that's the stars we see, just glowing clusters. There are no real stars that we can see because there are so many layers of these organisms in our atmosphere that we never see stars. And that's how the moon hologram is too. It's just a hologram, and it's made out of these things, and they provide the light and the glow and everything else. So we need to find out what they are and why they're here real fast. Because this is reality. You're looking at reality right now. Okay, so anyone who has doubts about reality, look at this very closely. This is your reality right now. Look at that. That thing is just going higher and higher, way up. And the organisms are still there all around it because the whole cluster is going way up. And it's a huge cluster. If you look closely, you can see them orbiting around the nucleus. I'll try and fix that in the middle so that you can see how they orbit the nucleus. If you look closely, all of them are orbiting counterclockwise around that nucleus. I'll try and pull back a little more. Let's see. From here, if you pay attention, you'll see them going around and around. They're going in their own clusters around the nucleus, plus all the clusters and their nuclei are going around that glowing nucleus, which is the main nucleus for the larger and greater cluster. And look at it, it's changing color and shape and everything all the time. And that's just electromagnetic energy being input or taken away, more or less. So when there's a lot of energy, it glows bright white. When there's less energy, you get the red color, and you get the other colors in between. And just look at all the organisms in the air. This is what we're breathing in. the microparticles of these organisms that are the same as they are, except just micro size, too small to see. So if this is the reality you want for yourself and your children and everyone you love, then don't do anything. Just relax, watch TV. Otherwise, you better get on the stick and start asking questions about what's going on and how come. We need to have answers, because this can't be allowed to go on in our atmosphere or anywhere else on this planet. Look at all those organisms. We're breathing them in every breath of air we take. So you better start thinking about all of this and what's going on in your environment. This is your immediate environment. It's the same all over this planet. I don't care where you live. If you go down underground 50 kilometers in a bunker that's nuclear proof, they're going to be in there with you. So you have nowhere to run. You got to face them. There is nowhere to run from them. These organisms are intelligent, or they're intelligently controlled. Either way, they know what they're doing. It doesn't matter if somebody else is controlling them or if they're controlling themselves. They know what they're doing, and whatever they're doing is not going to be good for us. And that's a guaranteed outcome. Because something like this in the air can't be good for anybody. You could just look at those organisms and how many there are. Just look at that. And look at all that energy that one single cluster is producing. And you multiply that by a few billion times, because that's how many of them there are, probably just over North America alone, let alone the rest of the world. And you think about it, how much heat is going out, and what's going to happen to all that ice when it melts. And where is it going to go? And aside from that, we're breeding those things in. And they're alien organisms. We don't know what they can do to us. So this is no longer a thing to ignore, to avoid, or to deny. They're here, and they're not going to leave. We have to make them leave. That's the only way they're going to leave, is if we make them leave. Because they're not going to do it on their own. They didn't come here all that way to do it on their own. So now you have a good idea of what a cluster looks like in operation, even though I had to move this thing 1,000 times to keep it on in focus and in view, because the thing is moving so fast and it's going straight up. Just moving straight up. It's probably going to space, because the cluster is big enough now it can go into space. But it was raised and reared right here on the ground, either in the water or on the ground in the trees. So now it's big enough, now it's going out off into space. Just look at that plasma, how bright it is. And think about it. Take your time and think about it. Don't make any rash decisions. Just think about it carefully. What does this mean for you and your family? And what do these organisms represent to you and your family? And ask yourself, how come this is going on and why are they here? And why are we doing nothing to do anything about them? Like, how come we're denying that they exist rather than do something? That's the question you should be asking yourself. Why are we all denying that they exist instead of doing something? And start with yourself if you're going to blame anybody. Because this is no time to lay blame, it's time to do something. Just look at how many times I have to adjust the camera because it's climbing straight up and it's going so fast. And look at the speed of the orbs, it's increased even more. It's even more active, the whole cluster. Now you can really see the orbs around it moving, and really super fast too. Just look at the cluster right there in the center. And that's the nucleus. All the other orbs around it make up the larger cluster, the greater cluster. And they're all in their own individual clusters. So it's a bunch of clusters revolving around the cluster nucleus and revolving around their own nuclei as they do that. So all those revolutions and all that speed creates the plasma in the middle, which is the main nucleus for the whole thing. And that's how they create electromagnetic energy, which they draw off for power, and they power up all the clusters from that one single cluster nucleus that acts as a nucleus for all of them. Things going so fast I can't keep up with it because I got the camera mounted and it's hard to keep changing the adjustments every 2 seconds. And you can see that it got smaller. That's because it's climbed up way high in the atmosphere. And it's pretty soon will be leaving the atmosphere if it keeps going. Okay, so I'm at 36 minutes almost. That's enough. I'm getting tired of this moving the camera every 2 seconds. One more time and that's it. Okay, that's it.